Opinion disorder in world order: how power, principles, and alliances are fracturing the world as we, the baby boomers or Generation X, all born prior to 1964 saw, was a wonderful place with clearly defined lines between good and evil countries and people. It was contingent upon which side of the border one was born on, and there was no choice. In the first half of the 20th century, there were the good guys, the Allies, because they won eventually and wrote the books and global orders after the First and Second World Wars, and then there were the evil forces, the Axis, who lost and therefore had to suffer the humiliation in the history books and thereafter had to heed and follow the Allies for the balance of the 20th century. In the second half of the 20th century, times began to improve, with both winners and losers licking their wounds. Yet, a need was felt for enemies and evils. Thus, the Cold War had to be manufactured. Nonetheless, the world was simple to understand, maintaining a balance between good and bad, as the gods, be they Abrahamic, the crores of Indians deities, or no god for non-believers, had always desired. There is no order without balance. Eventually, in the last few decades, the Soviets decided to implode, leaving no major evil to fight. There was only one gun-wielding superpower on Earth, left standing to police and dominate the world. The world was unipolar, and everyone was cheering. The 21st century is turning out to be a challenge to understand, as difficult as it is for Generation Z and later millennials. It is becoming disorderly, with the Chinese staking claim, new power centers, small but aligned and partnered, emerging, and the role of non-state actors becoming preeminent. By non-state actors, one doesn't imply the bad terrorist ones, but the worst kinds, the corporates and military-industrial complexes who desire only order through controlled disorder by them. The world is difficult to comprehend even for the best geopolitical armchair academics. The common citizens of the world have already given up as they find the orders written by the so-called good guys, world police, and preachers of good behavior, the Western and First World, not only because of the power they wield but also because they are all white, the color of good, being turned on its head. The leader of the most powerful country backslaps, shakes hands, and embraces a US world-designated terrorist with 10 million on his head in the White House, the romanticist residence of the world. Then, he takes the level one notch up by having lunch at his residence with a proxy military dictator who appointed himself as a field marshal, bypassing all civilian leadership and letting down the entire population of Pakistan that elected a government, however flawed the election may have been. It became clear that the more terror one controls, the world would seek the company. It is like in India, where politicians used to have Muslims a few decades back, but now the order has been established that the Musliman has taken over the reins as it is much easier to avoid sharing power. The international organizations have fallen into disarray. They were, in any case, established by the First World after the Second World War to continue colonization of the rest of the world in a much more refined and gentlemanly manner, extracting resources and forcing markets. Those countries who didn't fall in line were declared non-democratic, and then the controls were re-established through the most brutal dictator or feudal available locally, directly, or through proxy democratic governments. The most telling expose has been the United Nations. The display of the naked truth of the facade of world order and decency came about in the recent vote on condemning the Taliban for the repression it is conducting in Afghanistan. They were the bedfellows of the Americans and the NATO countries in the first venture of the First World in the last quarter of the 20th century, defeating the Soviets and, in the process, sowing seeds for the worst kind of religious terrorism in the region. The spark has only touched these countries as the worst is yet to come in Europe and the US. Not having learnt the lessons of the British losing each and every foray in Afghanistan in the first half of the 20th century, and the Soviets losing their only major confrontation ever to the Taliban, the First World tried to tame their earlier bride through proxies and physical presence in the 21st century. They were surprised and shocked to be unable to tame the uneducated, disparate, and divided tribals with no big guns, gunships, missiles, aircraft, and aircraft carriers. The world's biggest powers, with more than 75% of the world GDP, powerful militaries, excluding China that was not a party to the misadventure, failed to tame the big turbaned, disheveled, and only equipped with Russian-origin Kalashnikovs and steely resolve. The Taliban owned the world in the United Nations. In the United Nations General Assembly vote on condemning repression by the Taliban, the shocker was that the US and Israel voted against it. The US had recently been booted out unceremoniously, leaving billions of dollars worth of military equipment and pride behind after 20 years. And Israel, on the wrong end of Islamic terror, had also followed suit. India had to abstain, as your enemy's enemy is your friend, to deny the strategic depth so sought after by Pakistan and keep the channels for trade towards the Kar. Clearly, Afghanistan is not so distant for India. Iran chose to abstain for its own compulsions. They share a tenuous border with Afghanistan. China has significant resource interests in Afghanistan, and Russia wanted some credibility through a possible future partner. Only 116, out of the entire 193, fully cognizant of Taliban repression against non-Muslims and women, voted for the motion. They are yet to learn the game of trade and terror. The world has become a strange place where morality, freedom of choice and voice, and democracy are unfamiliar terms with trade and terror, state-sanctioned or non-state-driven, having taken primacy. The rise of China and its abrasive conduct, the realization of the Third World emerging to the reality that they also matter, and the diminishing power, military, and economic, of the most powerful countries and their alliances having overplayed their hands for too long, has made the world uncertain and disorderly. The economic crises brought about by the greed of the big corporates and the climate impact caused by huge consumerism by a few at the expense of the rest are impacting those who were always exploited. Having migrated in search of jobs or been invited to do the low-end work in the host country, these migrants, legal or illegal, now rise to claim the space given voluntarily but without a thought to the long-term consequences. Technology is the third T, forming a triad with trade and terror, causing disruptions never witnessed before. The securing of rare earth materials, besides the niche research and development that drive the engines of rapid technological evolution, has become a moot point of conversation or threats in a recent trade war on tariffs that has now emerged due to another T, Trump, driving the agenda. The countries of the world are fractured, internally and externally. The old-time established norms of loyalties, alliances, and friendships between nations and even individuals, however powerful they may be, are shattered, driving the disorder. The affection between the two powerful entities on either side of the Atlantic, the US and NATO, is now under stress due to commitment about funds. Money can make any marriage go bad. The same was witnessed in the last few months of May to July 2025. Forcing the unwilling partners of NATO and Europe to commit 5% of the GDP in defense. Similar stress can be seen in other alliances, due to the waning and waxing of power of different lead countries. SAARC never took off, SCO is under stress, ASEAN is operating under fear of China, BRICS remains a tiger on paper, and the state is similar in formal and informal alliances, associations, and partnerships. Even the non-state partnerships of terror organizations and corporates are under stress and duress due to different reasons. The only committed partnership remains that of the corporates in the uncertain and volatile world of disorder. Swipe left for next video. India needs to survive this uncertain and disorderly world through careful maneuvering in trade, controlling terror, internal and external, and managing Trump, until he survives avoiding impeachment, and investing in technology. The only close and tough challenge will come from China, under internal distress and external overstretch, and yet powerful enough. A deft economic and political management of China with a powerful military is imperative. If the Chanakyan philosophies are followed in letter and spirit, and the culture of national interests imbibed from the world's most powerful, the leadership of the country can stay the course of achieving the mission of Sashakt Bharat 2047, that is both Viksit and Surakshit. Chaos and disorder are the environments where Bharat lives daily and thrives in the long term through innovation and survivalist instincts. Views expressed in the above piece are personal and solely those of the author. They do not necessarily reflect NEWS18's views. Latest blogs.